So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me again today. Another Tuesday we're together. This is the last day we're together in January. Imagine we've gone through already a month is gone for the year. So not quite, we're still here. So we're good. We're good. But so for this picture, for today's art, you'll want some paper towel and you'll want some water, and I have 2 containers of water. I'm just using bigger ones these days. The other one, my set of 2 has my little paper towels in it. So maybe I need to switch that over. And we're going to do cardinals, a cardinal couple. So we have a male and female. Males have the color, females don't, unfortunately, you know, but I guess that's so that we can find them. So if you're a female, you know what to look for. So that's always a good thing. And we'll want some brushes. So I will pull out a couple number 3 brushes and a number, let's see, what have I got here? A number 6 brush. Number 6 brush will give me good coverage for my background. And you'll also want a blow dryer if you're going to paint the background. So colors, we have blue, we have red, we have ochre, we have yellow, we have a little bit of sap green, and our diagram that's drawn. So hopefully you have drawn that. If this is your first time, welcome. So thank you. This is a step-by-step watercolor instruction. It's if I'm going too fast and you're having trouble catching up, please open your mic and ask me to just slow it down a little bit. That's totally acceptable. Don't feel embarrassed about that. We all have different rates of speed of catching up and doing artwork. So, and I also, as I say in many or most of the art classes, please remember this is just a piece of paper. If you're not happy with what you do the first time round, or if you want to make this a different kind of bird in a different color, that choice is yours. This is your art, but please remember it's just a piece of paper. So we'll just go through step by step, and you can go back through and redo the picture in whatever color you like. So with that, we'll get started. So let's just get into art mode. And I have said for the last couple of weeks that we'll just, instead of a really deep breath and holding it, we can still do that. But let's do that from a different place. So let's go into our heart. So just quietly, just quiet your mind for a second or two. And just feel where your heart is. You can physically feel that. And then with your mind's eye, you can close your eyes if you like. Just go into your heart, inside your heart. That's the one that knows who you really are. That's the one where your soul resides. So we'll just sit there for a moment and we'll take a deep breath and just hold it for a second and release. And when you release, drop your shoulders down, let your arms soften, let your chest soften. We'll take a second deep breath in from that place, from that heart within your heart. Deep breath in. And hold it for a second. And release. Just soften everything. Just feel the tension dropping out of your shoulders, out of your arms, out of your neck, out of your chest. And a third deep breath in. And hold it just temporarily. And release. And we'll paint from that place today. So thank you for joining me in that exercise. And as I said, I have drawn, just like I've sent out to all of you, a picture of these cardinals. There they are. Hopefully you've been able to draw those to the best of your ability. And remember, this is your art. These are your cardinals. Paint what you like. If you want to go beyond the borders, beyond the lines, just think unlimited. Just think no lines. And we'll paint and just have fun with this. So I'm just going to turn my camera down to the picture. We'll see that picture. And we're going to do our background. And our background, I'm just going to get clear water. So I'm just using clean water, just clear water in my brush, just swishing it around. And then I'm just going to paint my whole background. So I'm going to leave the birds. It's okay if you paint over the branches and the leaves. But here's where we get into the fun stuff. Now we're going to put some color on this. So we're just going to paint with clear water the whole background. Just avoid those birds as much as you can. If color gets on, we'll still be able to paint over it or lift off. So that's not going to be a terrible thing. But you can go over those branches. You can go over where those berries are. But we'll just avoid that bird as much as possible. And it's even okay if you go over the feet. So when we paint, when we're painting, and because it's clear water, sometimes it's difficult to see where have we painted, where might we not, where we might have missed. And so when you hold your canvas on an angle to the light, whatever light source you have, you will be able to see if there's a dry spot. So again, I'm just using a number 6 brush and just clear water, just going over my canvas, just around those birds. But I do want to go around the outside of the birds so that I don't have that halo effect when I'm finished painting. So if we just turn it on an angle, you may see some dry spots. So if you see dry spots, just touch them with your brush. Just add a little bit of water. So I can see I've missed almost this whole side. And I'll go right along the back of that bird. And it's a big area, so it might take you a little bit longer, but just come right along the side of the bird where your lines are. Just so we don't have that halo effect. And if for whatever reason you've painted on your bird, you can see water on there. You can use a paper towel and just tap off any water where that might be where you don't want it. And when we're looking at the color of blue, it's up to you. You can have a cerulean blue, which is very bright. You could have a cobalt blue, which is a little more bluish. If I look, this is a cobalt blue. This is a cerulean blue. This is a phthalo blue. And this is an ultramarine blue. So depending on what you want your sky to look like, you can choose any of those colors, or if you have another blue, you might have another one that's called lake blue. That's entirely up to you. So this will make the difference of how our pictures will become uniquely our own. So I'm not telling you which color to use, you decide. Now that I've told you that, we can go ahead with the color we're going to put on for our sky. And I'm putting my blue on. Now I do want that blue to come right to the bird. There we go. We're going to go right to the outside edges. And yes, Linda, I will give you, I will send you an email so you'll have that. Some people are wondering about the acrylic class, and the acrylic class has been sent out via email. So it's a video for you to follow, but I will be in touch with you, Linda. And that the January has gone out. It is the hearts. It's the key to my heart. So again, I'm going right over the branches. I am bringing that really close to the bird's face. And I'm putting that blue all around. I can go right over their feet and right over their branches. And I might get just a little bit of extra water just to move some of that around. I'm going to tip my canvas and let some of that run. And I've got more to do. It's a big background. And we're not looking for a completely even background. We are going to come back with some paper towel and create some clouds in the sky. And the clouds in the sky are going to be around where our birds are, so that we have a little bit of a sky opening. We'll just give them a little bit more accentuation. So I have a little bit of pooling at the bottom. You can see this. It's quite heavy. I'm just going to put a paper towel at the bottom and let that excess just be picked up by the paper towel. So I'm not actually going on the canvas. I'm just below it. And then with my paper towel, and it's just a dry paper towel, I'm just going to create the look of a little bit of clouds behind my bird. I'm just using the top bird first, a little bit of cloud, just by lifting off a little bit of paint. And I'm going to do the same for the bottom bird. A little bit of cloud in the sky. So we've created a nice cloudy day. We put the paint on and lifted off a little bit. We've got a nice background. And this is where you'll need to get your blow dryer if you've got that handy. And we'll dry this before we do any other painting. So I'm just going to mute myself for a minute or two while I blow dry. And I'll be right back to you. So there, that's dry for me to move on. I'm just going to add a little bit of extra tape on the back at the corners. A couple of them have lifted, so I'm just using a little bit of green tape just underneath that corner. And because it's dry, I'll be able to put my fingers on there. There we go. Oh, it wasn't quite dry, but that's okay. There we are. And the other corner, just to tack that down while I finish what I'm doing. There we go. So there I've got my birds. From here, I'm going to start to work on the branches. So I'm going to my number 3 brush. So just a pointed brush, number 3. And I'm using brown. Now there's different browns. You can use more of a reddish brown. You can use more of a brown, the darker brown. We're just looking for branches. When I come to the end of this branch, I want it to come out as a point. In order for a branch to come out as a point or a leaf to come out as a point, when I hold my brush down and I come to the end and I lift off, I get a point. So I'll just do that again for those that need second instruction, or just you want to see it again. So I'm holding my brush down, I'm running it along, and when I lift off, I get a point. So you can try that on a piece of paper separate first, or your tape if you've got tape beside your picture. And when you lift off, you'll come up with a point. Again, one more time, using my brush, lift off, there's my point. So I want to point at the end of this brush, or at the end of this branch. So I'm coming along with my brown. I've got my lines already drawn. I'm following along in my lines. I come to the end and I just lift off, and it comes to a point. So, and then I'll fill in the rest of that branch. Just avoiding painting on the tail of the bird. So I'm going to leave that, stop at that tail, and then continue on the other side. If you have little bumps, little raised edges in your branches, that will look more natural. If you don't, that's okay. But if something happens and you end up with an extra little bump like that, if I put a little, you can put them in deliberately, or if they're not deliberate and you think it's going to look funny, it's not. It's a branch, and that's how branches grow. They have little bud, little nibs start out. So I'll just do the second branch, and it's underneath this second bird. And if you have a hand that's not quite steady and you have some little ridges and gullies in your branch, it's a branch. It's, if you look at branches out in nature, they're not all perfectly straight. We just want that little joiner just a little bit wider than the two branches. And then I have a branch that's going up in my picture, and I want to make it a fairly narrow branch. So when I have brown on, and we're going to use brown again. So when I have brown on my brush, if I have a lot of brown, if it's heavy on my brush, I can twirl my brush until I have my brush almost clear, but I only want paint on the tip of my brush. So you can also practice making a really fine line just by using the tip of your brush. So using that brown paint, I just want to make a really fine line going up this branch. And again, when I come to the end, I'm going to press, and then I'm just going to release so I get that point at the end. So I have some little branches coming off. And I'm almost not touching the canvas. And I also have a branch down below that is coming to this bunch of berries. And we'll do the little joins in between the berries after we put the berries on. So we have 3 little clumps of berries. So I'm just going to put a joiner. Just a little branch that joins those berries to the tree. So we have 1, 2, and a third one here. So look at how this picture is coming together already. We're still staying away from those birds just to make sure that our background is completely dry. So with sap green, now there's different colors, green as well. It's the same as the blue. There are different greens. This is sap green. This is hooker green. This is dusk green. You can choose your green for your leaves, but I'm starting with sap green. Now I'm going to start with this sap green, but once I get that sap green on, then I'm going to add some ochre on top of that. So once I blend those two, I'm going to have a yellowish green. This is a winter, so they're not really bright green leaves at this point. So just starting with the sap green, I'm going to paint these leaves. So I've already drawn them in, so I'm just going to paint them. So I'm painting the outside first and then filling in. I only have the 2 leaves at the top and I have 3 leaves at the side. So one coming from, that seems like the middle of nowhere. And then 2 more just coming off the branch. So this one at the bottom actually goes over top of the tail. And then, as I mentioned, I'm going to put ochre. And if you don't have ochre, if you're putting yellow on top, yellow will give you a very similar effect. So if I have sap green and I'm putting yellow on top, it's also going to give me that olivey look. So it can be yellow or ochre, your choice. And I'm putting ochre on top of my green. And it looks like it's really ochre right now, but with the green underneath, it will start to pick up the green underneath and it will change as it dries. So I'm doing all 5 leaves with this ochre on top of the green. So this is part of what watercolor is color on color on color. And it's also a lot of blending. And we can make colors that you wouldn't normally find in your palette, which is kind of fun. That's one of the joys of learning in watercolor. So allow yourself just to play. And if you go beyond the border of where your leaf is, that's awesome. Just go ahead. You have my permission to do that. And if you believe it or not, we are already at halftime. We have some more work to do. Obviously, our birds aren't painted yet, but I hope you like your background so far. I think with the clouds, if you've been able to do that, and the branches and the leaves, it's really pretty. If you were just to leave it like this, it actually would be an art project all in itself. But the card that was chosen for today says, "My friendships support me, nourish me, and inspire me." And so I consider you all my friends as well. So my friendships support me, nourish me, and inspire me. So thank you for doing that for me and with me. I appreciate you being here. And I think it's important sometimes just to say that to people. So having a look at our birds, we'll move on to the berries. So if I look at the berries, I might want the berries to be a really dark color. So this is carmine. That's kind of a pinky color. If I want to go even darker, I can go into something called alizarin crimson, which is just even that little bit darker. It's just that bolder color. I could go into brilliant red, which is it's kind of light, isn't it? Even, less water, more paint will give you a nicer color. Or I could go into, I'm not sure what kind of red this is. I think this is just called medium red. And medium red is what I used to paint the picture with the birds. So that's probably the color that I will go with, is just a medium red. But any of those 4, depending on what you've got in your palette, if you only have red, brilliant red, or something like that, that's great. So these are cardinals. So we're only going to start with the berries first. But the berries and the cardinal on the top branch are going to be the same color. You can, by adding water, make different variations. You can make it lighter or darker, but it will be the same color family. So I'm just making berries. So I'm just doing round circles. They don't all have to join. I want a little bit of sky to show through. Now, I'm just asking you to leave a little bit of sky to show through right now. It is a clump of berries, so we'll go back with brown and draw branches in between. But if you leave that sky, then we'll have a place to put that brown rather than having to paint over top. We'll be able to go in between. And we've got a larger clump of berries on the side. This is a big cluster. So we'll just fill that in. Some can be larger, some can be smaller. And just leaving that little bit in between will give us a nice space to add a few branches or a few joiners in between. And if this is stressing you, just take a deep breath. It's okay. It's going to be great. And it looks like some of you are ready to move on to the bird. So with the same color red that you've used for the berries, we're going to paint the bird. When it comes to the bird's eye, and we're only doing this on the bird up above, when it comes to the eye, we're going to leave the eye white. We're going to go around this bird has what looks like a mask. It looks very much like a mask. So we'll go around where that mask would be. So you already have the lines drawn. And we're just going right to the corner of the beak. And we're going to leave that section white. We'll come back and paint that black, but for now we'll leave that white and we'll paint the rest of the bird that red color, except the beak. So leave the beak as well, but we've painted to the beak so you'll know where to stop. And we'll go below the beak. And we'll paint the rest of the bird red. Including the tail feathers. And if something happens and you paint outside the lines, that was meant to be, that's okay. And before we paint any distinguishing marks on this bird, we're going to let it dry. So we'll move down to the bird below. And this bird is ochre. If you don't have ochre, ochre is a combination of yellow and brown. So my color ochre, it looks like this color that I'm painting on this card. If I were to mix brown and yellow together, I would come up with a similar color. Now that's a little browner. I might want a lighter brown with yellow. So I'll come up with ochre, something similar. So I'm using ochre and I'm painting this bird, the complete bird in ochre. So this is the female. Because she needs to protect herself, she's not quite as bright, so she needs to blend in. But she also has a black mask on, so we'll leave that mask area. We'll leave that white and paint the rest ochre, including that side feather. We're not painting the beak. Again, we're leaving that. That needs to be a little bit on the orangey side. And we'll paint those tail feathers coming down behind the branch. So we still want to give time for the top male cardinal to dry and the female down below. So we're going back into the brown that we used for our branches, and we're going to fill in the brown in between where our berries, where we see sky. So I'm using that brown and I'm just touching on those areas in between. I'm just using the tip of my brush just to fill that in. And if you put a little point or two coming out, little branch, that's fine. That's nice, little touch. And I'll do the same on the little cluster down below. I'm going to mix fresh brown in between just to join all those together. And it's okay to put a few dots here and there just around the outside. So there's my berries. They're not perfectly done. They're not supposed to be perfect. That's probably given us ample time for our cardinal up above to dry. So I do like to go from one section to another, allowing dry time. Then I'm less frustrated trying to mix things together and it doesn't work. Why isn't it working? Oh, because it's too wet. And then I'm fixing things. So rather than do that, I avoid it and move on to another section and come back when I can. Now I have the red. That is my cardinal. And if I mix a little bit of ochre with that, I'll come up with an orangey color. So it's no longer red. This is red. There's my orange and mixing. And you can do this with yellow and red as well. So we're looking for an orange color. So I'll use this color and paint my beaks. So I'll paint the beak for the bird above. And I'll paint the beak for the bird below. Now, if it's too close in color, it's pretty close in color, so I'm just going to add a little extra red because I do want that to show up on the bird below. So if you need to add just a touch of color, go ahead and do that. And the same red that's on the bird up above, I'm going to put a little bit of that color in my bird below, just a little bit, not too much. This is where my feathers join, so I'm just going to add a little bit of color in there, just a little bit on this back wing, and a little bit on the inside of my inside wing as well, just a little bit on the tail, just a little, just to make the two of them just a little bit uniform, but it definitely is more pronounced, this red on my bird up above. So it's just a little bit. If you put more than you want, you can lift off a little bit just using clear water and tapping it off with a paper towel onto your brush. I'd like to move on to the eye now of my upper cardinal with black paint. I can also switch to a zero brush, a really small brush. And with straight black paint, again, you can roll your brush, you can roll it and make sure you just have paint on the tip. I'm going to make an eye with the black paint. So I'm going to make a circle around where the eye is for the cardinal. I'll do that both on the top and the bottom, the bird on the bottom. So I'm also going to do a circle around that eye. And the reason I'm doing that is now I'm going to paint the face, but I have clear direction of where I do not want the paint to go. So I want to leave that circle. I'm going to paint all the way around that circle. But I'm not going to paint in that circle. So it's almost like it's wearing a mask. And I'll do the same for the cardinal down below. I've drawn that circle. So I'm going to stay outside of that circle. Just leave that white. While I have my small brush out, I'm going to give my cardinals some feet. They're just hanging on, is sitting on that branch, hanging on. So one is in front and the other is behind. So this one that is in front, there's a little bit of a join to the bird. The other one you can't see. And I'll do the feet for my cardinal down below. And still using my zero brush with black, I'm going to make some markings on my bird up above with black. So this is highlighting that wing. So I just have one movement, like a little arch, like a quarter moon. And then there are some lines that you would have penciled in. So hopefully you're still able to see those. And we'll just follow down the way the wing feathers would go. So I'm just following along. Just doing some of those markings. And highlighting the tail feathers. So this is like a shadow in between the tail feathers. A little bit of a shadow down below. And for my cardinal, my female cardinal, I can do just very, very lightly. I can do some lines just below that red on the chest. I want to do a nice defining shadow with the one wing on the side. And a shadow on the wing that's just down behind. And I can put a little bit of shading in between the tail feathers that are coming down behind that branch. So that was just a little bit darker than I wanted. So I just used paper towel just to soften that. I don't want it all gone, but I did want to soften it up a little bit. There we have our cardinal couple. And what you'll also want to do, if you like to do that, is to sign your art. Take credit for the work that you've done. And looking at this, the only other thing I might do, I'll just give a little bit of a very tiny line. If you're able to do this with black, very minimally between the beak where they join, maybe just put a little line in between. And you could put a little dot. Since you've got that white there now, you could just put a little tiny dot in the eye. Just leaving the white still, but just a little tiny dot. And I can just give a little brush of extra color on that belly. With a bigger brush, just a little extra color. There we have our cardinal couple. Stand those back up so you can see them. There they are. Nice sky. Nice clear day for them to be out. So there's definitely a difference between the two as far as color of sky. One was ultramarine blue, the other was cerulean blue. One has different kinds of clouds in the sky. The birds are the same or pretty close. That's my two versions of the cardinal couple. So thank you again. Okay, bye-bye.